I really want to be able to build more sources of income as I'm working. So there's a lot of stuff to try and filter through because everyone wants you to buy their course. Everyone wants you to hire them as a coach. You have to be really diligent and vigilant in who you give your time and attention to, because if you gave it to the wrong person, that's just going to set you further back.
What has been the biggest thing that has shifted with your perspective? All right, welcome to my podcast called Verses to Live By. Here, the main goal is to help people feel God's love, to deepen their understanding in the scriptures, and to know where to go in the scriptures when they're struggling with anything that's going on in their life. I fully feel like the more we can do this podcast, the more we'll help people at some point in their life. So I want to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, my name's Kelton. I'm 24, going on 25 here pretty soon. Born and raised in Virginia, actually. But then after high school, I moved out here because it was cheaper. There's more to do.
Okay, yeah. If your friends were all in a room and you weren't there, how would they describe you in a couple words?
In a couple words?
Or a sentence?
Well, I learned that, of my friends in the current group of people I've been hanging out with, they consider me the most chill one. So I definitely appreciate that because I try not to get involved in drama. I just love everyone, I like to think, or at least I try.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for me to consider someone not my friend anymore.
Yeah.
I just think that it should always be with unconditional love.
I love that. And I think that's exactly how the Savior wants it to be, right? He wants us to be forgiving. He wants us to be kind. He doesn't want us to judge other people, and he wants us to just love unconditionally and be able to forgive, because the more we forgive, the more he will forgive us on Judgment Day. The more grudges we hold, the more grudges he will hold on us on Judgment Day. And so I think that is just an amazing attribute. And I always like to ask people that come on this podcast, where do you see yourself in 10 years? If you could paint me a picture of where you see yourself in 10 years, what would you be doing? Where would you be living? Just go from there.
Well, for me, I'm not fond of the idea of working at the same place until you're 65 and only get to vacation for 2 weeks out of the year. I feel like there's so much more of just this beautiful earth we have to explore and enjoy and go to different countries and take in different cultures. And for me, I at least want to, hopefully by this point, I'm married with a couple kids. I'd love to have a family of my own, and getting to the point where I work and I've invested enough into side projects to start doing some other things that I like to do without having to rely on a singular source of income. So I can just write and create things.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. When you say writing, what kind of things would you look into writing? Or is that something that would really, like, if there's one thing you could do every day for the rest of your life and money didn't matter, what would it be?
It'd just be writing stories or writing poetry. I have a very active imagination. I love exploring narratives that I come up with. But it wasn't until recently, like in the past year or so, that I actually started to take it up and get more into it and realize, oh, wow, I actually really enjoy this.
I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, I want to let you go ahead and start us off with a verse that you've chosen for this podcast and tell us what it means to you and any stories you might have connected with that. And what that verse means to you.
I mean, for me, the most important one, I mean, without a doubt, my favorite one would have to be Second Nephi 32:3. That is one that I've always just loved. That was always my go-to. And basically how it goes is angels speak by the power of Christ, wherefore they speak the words of God. So, and it says, wherefore feast upon the words of Christ, for they'll tell you all the things that you should do. And for the longest time, I just took it from that. And it wasn't until a little while later that I actually paid attention to the verse after where it says, now, if you don't receive an answer, it's because you haven't asked. And I just think that's so important because people say, well, I mean, if he already knows, then I don't need to pray about it. But that's what he wants us to do. He wants us to ask, just to take that effort and show him that we're willing to learn.
I love that. That was beautiful. One thing I've noticed in the past couple weeks, I've been focusing on it as I've been watching The Chosen a lot, and it's really how Jesus he does something that I didn't realize before, but he will actually take time and leave his group of people and go off by himself and just spend time with God, right? And so that's such a beautiful thing when it comes to prayer. So I have this verse. It's in Romans chapter 8, verse 26, and it says, likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself make intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now I'll go back to why I think it's so cool, why Jesus will just go off and pray and spend time with God alone. But to really dive into this verse, it talks about how when we put in the time to pray, answers to things that we didn't even ask for in the prayer will be answered, right? And I think that is just such a cool way for God to work through us, because sometimes we don't know what we need to pray for. Sometimes we just need to pray. Sometimes we just need to get on our knees and start praying without really knowing what specifically to pray for. But guess what? Guess who does know what we need to pray for? God does. And so when we put in that time to pray, he's going to answer prayers that we might not have even asked for. And he'll also answer our prayers in ways we might not always expect, but it's on God's timing. And I think that's beautiful. And the other beautiful thing I think of when I think of prayer, and this one's never talked about, and this is why I think it's so cool, why Jesus will go off alone and just spend time with God, is listening to the answer of a prayer. Right? So we pray and we ask for all these things all the time. And, we give some thanks, but usually we're asking for things because we have such a heavy load on our shoulders. But then we go on our phone, or then we go watch TV or go watch a movie, right? We don't sit in God's presence and let him talk to us, let him answer our prayer. And so when I notice Jesus walks off all the time by himself, and he even says to his disciples, he says, guys, I just need some time for myself right now to go spend time with God. And he'll go, spend time with God, and it's him listening to God. Right. And so there's all these distractions right now of social media and our phones and TV and, all the new things that are going to give us that rush that we always feel like we need, that comes from the world. But really, we're not even giving God a chance to answer our prayers. And so I think that that's such an interesting concept. And so question for you is, what is your experience with prayer in your life right now?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that, because prior to just a couple days ago, I would have said, I don't know, because I don't really remember getting any answers. But it wasn't even a week ago where I had already been praying for guidance for some time. And then all of a sudden, just during the night, I felt the most amazing feeling. And I was just in awe because I realized that this was the long awaited answer that I was looking for my prayers. Just praying for some peace and some guidance. And it was a feeling like I have not felt before. And just from then I've always had this sort of peaceful feeling, just quiet, nothing crazy, but just staying with me because I've been making a lot of changes in just the past week alone.
Yeah,
And I feel like he's recognized that.
that's so powerful. I love that. Um, in the hardest times in your life, I want you to think of a couple difficult things you've gone through. Um, did you find yourself, because I mean we all do it. We're all sinners, right? I'm a sinner. I make mistakes all the time. I've definitely turned to the world a couple times after some tough things. But I've also realized from turning to the world after a couple difficult challenges that the world's not going to make me happy, right? The world doesn't have anything for me that's going to fulfill me like God's fulfillment will. Um, in a verse it says Christ is the living water, right? You'll never need to thirst again when you're relying and leaning onto Christ. And so, um, my question for you is when you're going through those difficult times, have you turned to the world? And when you did turn to the world, or if you did turn to the world, how did you realize that you really should have turned to God and and leaned on Him instead of the worldly things?
Oh no, 100%. I've definitely turned to
Yeah,
the world. I mean, there are times where I would pray as well, but not as not with as much as intention that I've had recently, where I'm like, all right, at this point, I'm just putting everything into God and just trusting. Like, not to say that I completely stopped everything else I was doing to try to do the same thing, but just that on top of it, and going back to like looking to the world, it was didn't really do much.
exactly.
And so like all these years of the things I've been dealing with, and the fact that I'm seeing like an actual genuine change that I've hoped for so long, at the same time that I started praying and actually for the first time in my life reading my scriptures diligently. um I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, definitely not a coincidence. It's amazing how um, God will answer prayers or even help us out even when we're not praying all the time. Even when we're deep in some worldly sins and worldly mistakes, He'll still help us out, right? And there's a reason we're here today right now, right? It's because God led us here. And so I think that that's just so amazing and so peaceful knowing that um he always has a plan for us. Even when we're trying to write our own book, he's got a much better book to write for us. So do you want to kind of dive into the challenges you're going for right now, or are they too personal to share?
Oh no, I'm pretty open about it.
Okay.
For most of my life, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, and that on top of having ADHD and anxiety, it just all kind of blends together. So at some points, you're like, I don't know which is which at this point in time. Um, I was in play therapy when I was 4. I don't remember it, but I just remember playing blocks with some lady every week.
Yeah.
um, so it's always been difficult for me to recognize the moments of happiness, or I guess I shouldn't say difficult, but
There's something always there that was holding you back from that.
there was always something there that, and most of the time myself because I'm just my own worst critic, um, feeling like I'm not worthy of this, or saying, oh, okay, well, when's the other shoe going to drop? And so I've lived with that my whole life. And it wasn't until I want to say 2.5 years ago that I decided I wanted to do something about it,
Right.
because I felt like I wasn't progressing in any way that was meaningful. And I was tired of it eventually. But but that was not something that was known to people unless I was really close to them.
Right.
And even, I mean, my parents knew, but I wouldn't detail like the extent of it until recently when I started opening up to them. So now at this point, I'm just like, I'm an open book about it. I don't mind talking about it, because if it means someone that can relate to it, or um,
Yeah.
understand it a little better, then
Yeah.
that's great.
That's amazing. So one, I want to say, um, the ability to share what you've been through and to be an open book for other people takes a lot more strength than you would think. And so I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, if you were to say no, I don't want to share right now, I would remind you that Jesus, when he was resurrected, the very first things he showed people was his scars. He let people know that he went through that for all of us, right? And so the fact that you shared that means a lot to me. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the spirit of fear and the spirit of anxiety and the spirit of doubt and the spirit of I'm not good enough. Those thoughts in our head, I fully believe they come from the devil. And it's such a natural thought, right? Everyone has those thoughts. Everyone has those doubts, right? And that is just one of the few things the devil will do each and every single day. He'll put that thought in your head to try and get at you, right? And the other thing I wanted to bring up is the laws that we create in our mind. So if you wake up every single day and you look in the mirror and say, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to struggle with anxiety today, or I'm going to struggle with depression today, you're creating a mental law that will happen. And that law, so a law is something that we live by, right? You're starting to live by those thoughts, right? If you were to wake up now you can create good mental laws and bad mental laws. If you were to wake up every single day and say, I'm doing enough, or I love myself, I care about myself, you would start to create a mental law that you do care about yourself, you do love yourself, you are doing enough, and you'd start to believe that. And that thought alone, I learned that a couple weeks ago, the mental law thing, that really shifted my whole perspective, because I realized each and every single day I'm creating these small mental laws that I'm going to believe fully. And a lot of the times, because we are all of the world, and we'll create these mental laws that are bad, that are negative. But if we can shift that to creating good mental laws, it can do wonders for us. And guess who created the opposite of the spirit of fear and temptation and the spirit of hate? Jesus created the opposite of that, which is the spirit of love, the spirit of kindness, the spirit of peace. And so those thoughts alone have gotten me through a lot. And I really wish people could just fully understand that. So, do you have another verse that you have that you just absolutely love and want to share right now?
Yeah. I accidentally just exited out of it, but
No worries.
okay. Well, one of the more recent ones is Luke chapter 1, verse 37, where it says, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." And if you had asked me a little while ago, I probably would say that doesn't mean anything. But for me
Yeah.
now, that is everything, because I mean, just the change I've felt.
The last week.
Yeah, where I actually started to believe the things that I was telling myself that I wasn't, um, that I was enough, and that I was going to be okay. That was a huge moment for me. At like 4 a.m,
Yeah.
I'm breaking down because I actually believe the words I'm saying for the first time, and I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
And that verse to me just encapsulates how amazing that feeling is,
Right.
and knowing that I have God on my side.
Right. And I have a verse just like that. It's John 15, verse 7, and it says, "If ye abide in me, and my words abide." Okay, let me say that again. John 15, verse 7, it says, "If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you." Now, a lot of people look at that verse and say, "Well, Luke, I tried. I asked God for a mansion, and he didn't give it to me. I asked God for $1 million. He didn't give it to me." One, you have to really fully be with the Spirit, right? You have to have the mindset of, in the heart of, okay, whatever God's will is, that's what's gonna be done. He's the author of my book. He's gonna write my pages. But two, it's not always answered in the timeline that you want it to be answered in. He's not just gonna drop off $1 million on your porch, right?
Right.
But also make sure that you're praying for things that are gonna help him as well as help you, right? And so one thing I've told myself ever since I started shifting my content to Christian content is, okay, I feel like I'm actually doing something for God, right? And I'm not going to expect anything in return, because I know what I'm preaching about and what I'm talking about is correct. And if he gives me something in return, his will be done, right? But I'm not going to try and write my book. I'm going to do what he wants me to do. I'm going to do his will and his plan instead of trying to do my own plan and just see what happens, right? And doing something for God and not expecting anything in return. God knows, God sees that, he knows that, and he's going to give you things in return. Let me tell you. There's been countless times where I've thought, how am I going to pay my bills this month? And he provides, right? There's been countless times where I've thought, how am I going to get through this difficult challenge? Right? My father-in-law passed away around a year ago, like 9 months ago. And that has been something that has weighed on my wife and I a lot. But man, when I tell you the way that she reads her scriptures, even more than she did before now, is so inspiring to me. Seeing her lean on God instead of just turning to the world and saying, "Oh, why would he do that?" It's something that I can't put into words, because it's so beautiful seeing her just lean on God now, and fully devote herself to Christ. And a lot of people think, well, why would God do this to me? That thought of why would God do this to me is not always the case, right? Understand, devil is also doing things all the time, right? And so the devil will place distractions in our life. He'll place people that will break our hearts in our life, with relationships. He'll put bad friends in our lives as distractions, right? So sometimes people are like, why did God do that to me? You know, that heartbreak hurt, right? That relationship, I hate that I went through that. Understand, sometimes it's not from God, it's from the devil. It's a distraction from the devil, right? And And just the thought of trust in him, trust in his plan and not your own has been such a game changer to me. So question I have for you is how have you noticed that in your life? Or how have you seen God's hand when things just weren't going your way?
Well, for a long time, it was hard to see it at all. There was a lot of times where I questioned, is there even a God? Because why am I still suffering like this? And that was the narrative I had for myself for such a long time, that I didn't recognize the things he had already done. And I still kick myself over it, because I still, even though I was going through that, I still had the most amazing parents, or the most amazing friends that knew when to reach out to me when I was struggling. And looking back on that now, it's so obvious, because,
Yeah.
I just had amazing people that God placed into my life that I'm just ever so grateful for. And now it's a lot easier for me to recognize those things now.
Yeah. And as you've drawn closer to God in the last week, with prayer and scriptures, have you noticed the ways that the devil will try and get at you each day? Or what has been the biggest thing that has shifted with your perspective?
Recognizing distractions. I mean, feeling those, because everything's attention these days. Everything's fighting for our attention, whether it's ads or companies or even people. Everything's about attention now. And he doesn't even necessarily need to keep us distracted by bad things. He just needs us distracted from the good things. That's
Right.
that's all it takes.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And like I was saying before, the way that Jesus will just go off on his own and just let God speak to him, right? Take away from all the distractions that's around us. He'll separate himself. And I like to think if Jesus was here right now, one, I don't think he'd have all A's in his classes. And the reason for that is because it's not because he wouldn't work hard. He'd work so hard. And if he had to do school, I don't even think he'd go to school if he was here right now. But let's say he had to do school. He was doing 15 credits. Okay. I don't think he'd have all A's. I think he'd have, low B's. And the reason for that, let's ignore the part of he's half God and he could just ace everything if he wanted to. I think it's because he'd be devoting himself to service. He'd be devoting himself to helping other people around him. And he wouldn't be judging other people. We see a lot of judgment in the world today, and that's super sad. But what did Jesus do when he was on this earth? He didn't sit with righteous people. He sat with sinners, right? He sat with people that made mistakes. And when he got questioned about that from the Pharisees, he said, well, I'm not here for the righteous people. I'm here for the sinners. So he didn't judge those people. He guided them out of their mistakes, right? And so that's such a fine line, and that's such an amazing thing when I think about it. Him not judging other people, right? He is the only person that could have judged other people because he was perfect. But he still didn't judge other people. Now, we should never, ever judge other people because we are not perfect. We make mistakes ourselves. And if we're judging other people when we have our own stuff that we're messing up on, it's like we're a hypocrite at the end of the day. And so question I have for you is it's a very fine line between judging and guiding. How do you see yourself walking that line? If you see a friend that's doing something they shouldn't do, because according to the law of God from the commandments, it's not right. So how can we guide those people instead of jumping to judgment? And I think you do a really good job of this, just being your friend and of knowing you for so long. I think you do a really good job of not judging. So how can other people that do judge step away from that and guide instead?
Oh, well, I didn't even think I was doing a good job of that myself.
You do an amazing job.
I think the biggest thing is just always having empathy. Because if you understand why people make decisions, it's a lot easier to I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words.
I like the empathy.
Yeah, the first thing foremost is if you have empathy, then already you're going to be more inclined to wanting to help them versus just judging them because you don't understand their position. And I've always felt that's more important, is being there for them versus judging them, because all it's doing is putting them down even further. And that's
right.
That doesn't help anyone.
It's like kicking someone when they're already down, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. And if you do that to a good friend, they're going to be like, why the heck did my friend just do that? Why did he just kick me when I was down, right? I already know I'm in the wrong here, but why am I getting kicked when I'm down? So I love that.
Yeah. And I'm an imperfect person, so I don't have any room to be judging anyone.
Exactly.
As is.
Exactly. No one does, and that's the whole point. So my last verse that I have to share tonight is Matthew chapter 7, verses 14 through 15, and we're shifting a little bit, talking about false prophets. It says, "But straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and there are few that find it. Beware of false prophets, and come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." This verse is powerful and strong, and I think it's so beautiful. The first part of it is talking about how if you follow the crowd, you're going to go straight into doing exactly what Satan wants, falling into all these sins and addictions and all these problems if you follow the crowd. But if you steer away from the crowd and follow God instead, there's going to be fewer people that are going down that road. But the relationships you build are going to be so much better because you have that in common, right? And so, yeah, there's going to be few that find that path, like it says in this verse. But it will lead you to life, whereas the rest, all the sins and addictions and temptations, will lead you to the chains Satan wants you stuck in. And when I say that, I mean, if you start drinking every single day and you have a drinking problem, you're tied down to drinking all the time, right? That sin is hard to break from. It's super hard to break out of those chains, right? You got to go to therapy. You got to go to help groups. When you have an addiction, it's difficult to break from, right? And the second part of this says, "Be aware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." Not even talking about God. I can notice this all the time. There's people online. I don't know if this is on your feed. This might just be my feed, but they're like, "This is how you make money fast. This is how you can, escape and become a millionaire tomorrow." That's like super, super difficult. And they didn't even do that themselves. So one, they're a false prophet to that knowledge, right? Because they didn't actually do it. They're just trying to get you to buy their course or to buy, their guide.
15-step program.
Exactly. Their 15-step program. And you know what? Those programs are how they make money, right? And so they're lying to you, and that they're being a false prophet in the sense of how to make money fast. Now, you can also see it in churches. But before I get into that, I want to ask you, have you noticed these false prophets in your life? And if so, do share.
Oh, 100%. That's it's a lot of my feed now, because I really want to be able to build more sources of income as I'm working. So there's a lot of stuff to try and filter through, because everyone wants you to buy their course. Everyone wants you to hire them as a coach. So you have to be really diligent and vigilant in who you give your time and attention to. Because if you gave it to the wrong person, that's just going to set you further back.
Yeah. I saw a video the other day about someone that bought someone's one-on-one coaching program. It was $20,000. And then they got ghosted. And they never heard from that person again. So, I mean, it's just stealing money at this point. But when you look at it from God's perspective of false prophets, there's false prophets all over the place. Heck, you can find false prophets just down the street right now. And it's the way that the intentions of people's preaching is. So when I say that, when you go to a church, if in any way they're bashing on another church, that is a false prophet. Because God does not want us to hate or bash on other people. He wants us to love, to be open, to have empathy, like you were talking about, to care about these people, right? And so there's churches out there that will spend the first half singing music, feeling the Spirit, right? Preaching about God. And it's such a great feeling. I've been in those churches. I went with my sister one time because she's not LDS. And it's such a great feeling. And then immediately when the preacher comes on, he goes, "Oh man, the Spirit of God is so good. And you're not going to find that at LDS churches," right? And then he starts just bashing on an LDS church, right? And that right there is a false prophet. Because my question for you is, what spirit do you think is in the room when that happens? In the beginning, you're feeling God's Spirit, you're feeling God's love. But after he bashes on a church or a group of people, what spirit do you think's in that room?
I don't think it's there in the first place, or not the first place, but at that point, it's not there anymore.
Right.
And I think that goes for just anyone.
Exactly.
Like, why bother spending time bashing other people when we could just have more time to
connect?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the spirit of, it might have been the Spirit of God in the beginning, the first half, but as soon as that bashing starts on another person, whether it's in a church group or just a friend group in general, the spirit of anger kind of creeps in there, right? And that spirit of anger comes from the devil. And so I think it's so important for us to look out for those false prophets, whether it's a false prophet of God, a false prophet for money, those are the two examples I brought up, but there's many other examples, a false prophet of just bashing on friends behind their back, right? I think that's so important to avoid. And something you can see when you open your eyes to it, like you were saying before, you feel like your eyes have been opened up to a lot more ever since you've started praying. And I think that is, something that I've opened up my eyes to, and I haven't been able to unsee it after I've seen it. So do you have any other last thoughts? Or stories that you wanted to share?
I guess not necessarily stories, because I still have a long ways to go. Just because I had a confirmation doesn't mean I'm done with my work. I still have.
That right there is beautiful.
You think so?
I really do, because people can get so high off of a confirmation, whether it's from God or maybe a job opportunity came up They get so happy about it. They're like, oh, I'm going to go and make $100K now a year because of this job I just got. Or, there's other confirmations that people will get that where they'll just get so happy off of that and think that they have it all, when really it's not like that. You got to keep going. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's a continuous journey. And I'm just really excited about continuing this, since I've put in the intention and I've put in the genuine desire. I mean, first of all, it starts with a desire, and sometimes you have to pray for a desire to have a desire, and that, but it's worth it. I think it's worth it to continue to try. It took me a while, and now that I've had that, I'm excited for the next part of my journey moving forward.
That's beautiful. I love that. Let's end there. That was beautiful.
Thanks.
That was amazing. All right. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And see you next time.
Sounds good.
Awesome, man.